I'd like to open the February 12th Town Council meeting down in Washington. Call to order. Captain Leggett is unable to be here, we just learned, and Laura Dodd, quite sick and is not here as well. For those who care about such things as the minutes, we'll be using this in the video. Let me first, and I've already done it for most people, but introduce Gary Curry, who was the new county administrator. Gary started working here in early January, and you've already met most people. John Bennett's our town council here, and Ray Gooch, and Klaus, who runs Foster Harris House, and Bob Fash at the Inn, and Bonnie Moore at the Inn. Caroline Yancey behind you is the new member of the Planning Commission, and I think that's everybody. Okay, that's what we're going to do tonight. We have two interesting presentations that we're going to do at the very beginning before we get into the normal flow of town meetings. First is Mark Nesbitt from VDOT. Mark works out of the Warrenton office. Rappahannock is one of his kingdoms in the world of VDOT. And Mark is going to talk about the plans VDOT has for repaving a number of the streets in town this year, and then remaining streets, or many other streets, several other streets, 2019. Mark, should I just turn it over to you, or
That's fine.
Did everybody get one of these?
No. I think there's like 10 copies.
I'll tell you what, Mark, why don't you give these to folks out there? And, I mean, maybe I should just start off and describe it. As everybody surely knows, most of the streets in town have not been repaved since the wastewater system was put in. The exception to that is Warren Avenue coming into town and Main Street going west from the post office / in corner. And those were done several years ago. They're, I think, they're part of the county highway, or part of the county highway system, whichever system. And so we're quite delighted that we're going to do that on the other streets. With that, Mark, you want to just, any words you want to say? And I'm sure any questions people might have.
Sure. The roads in here that are in blue are roads that are already under contract for this construction season. We have the contractor. He has this multi-county contract for plant mix. So as far as when he's, or specific what day or when they're going to be done, I have no idea at this time. It'll be sometime before end of November. We will know. They do a 2-week look ahead, and we'll kind of have a feeling probably 2 to 4 weeks prior to moving in when they're going to move in. So I'll let y'all know as soon as I know when the schedule says that they're going to be moving in. But it's a fairly large contract, and there's a number of roads in Fauquier, Culpeper, and Rappahannock County.
Well, would it be helpful? There are a number, as you can imagine, there are several times during the year where there's a lot of action in town, be it a Christmas parade or that's in December, Halloween, or something going to be big at the end. Would it be helpful to give you guys a couple of, probably 3 weekends out of the entire year? So that we really shouldn't be doing it now.
That would be great if you could provide that. We'll do our best to avoid those times.
Okay.
But anyway, the streets in blue are, and what we're doing are secondary roads. We've got primary routes and secondary routes. Fort Warren Avenue coming into town up to Main Street is business 211, and then Main Street out westerly is continues in business 211. Those routes are in fairly decent shape. They're not going to be paved in the next, probably the next several years. The ones in blue will be paved this construction season, And then the ones in pink, the rest of them, most of the roads, yeah, pretty much all the roads in town will be picked up in 2019. Plans are to come in and do a light mill and to try to mill off the irregularities. And then we'll put back layer plant mix on top of that and try to tie it back into existing driveways and curbs and other things, try to have as smooth as tight as possible. They'll adjust whatever adjustments need to be to manholes and valves and things like that. The contractor will do that as part of their project. So try to get as smooth a surface in as possible. Right now, the work for 2018 is scheduled to be done during the day. We haven't really gotten to that detail on the roads for 2019. Typically, the construction process is very loud and noisy. A lot of backup alarms and diesel trucks and things like that. Felt like for this environment, probably daytime work, even though it's probably a little inconvenience to some of the businesses, but daytime work would be the least impactful as far as noise, especially to the residents and trying to sleep at night. I don't see this work taking very long. It's not a lot of miles, so I don't see it taking more than a few days at most. But we'll know further with the contractor, we'll get a schedule.
Mark, it was my impression that Piedmont Street was going to be done this year, which no longer looks like that's the case. I caught that this afternoon. I was going through this back over with my maintenance manager, and there was the guy who did the math was not the guy who worked it up. So we caught that as Piedmont Avenue from Main Street out would be caught in 2019, not 2018. So this is right.
So this is right.
Questions? Comments, questions?
Mark, how early would they start when you say during the day?
I believe the start times are at 7, and typically till dawn till dusk.
When they mill off the surface, that's probably a different contractor that actually does the milling. How long between milling it and repaving?
It's usually fairly close. It's all under the same general contractor, right? Some of them do subcontract out the milling. I believe Superior is the general contractor, paving contractor. I'm not sure if I didn't hear whether he was going to sub out the milling part of it. He does have the equipment to do everything.
Right.
But
I'm just wondering about, if it's, they mill it one week and then they pave it the next week, we deal with a lot of dust in the inventory.
Well, they'll be responsible if there's any lapse in time. I'm pretty certain that it's set up to pave and mill and pave fairly quickly afterwards. But they'll be responsible for applying water or whatever in the meantime if there is any dust.
Okay.
Will these streets be closed when they're working on them so people will take a detour?
Most likely, some of the streets are very narrow. There will be signs and detours. Most of them they're very easy detours, just one block at a time. I really don't see any issues with that, except for 622 coming into town, and Butterstack coming into town. They'll probably block a lane at a time and have a flagger to get traffic around. But some of these other streets, they'll cut network streets between Gay Street and Main Street will most likely. Those are kind of narrow, especially Gay Street on this side of 211 is fairly narrow. This side of Orange Street, and I can't see them being able to mill and pave that without closing it a block at a time. But like I said, there will be local traffic if you need to get to your homes. We're not going to keep anybody from getting away from the road.
just want to clarify again, so Piedmont would be this year or next year?
Everything in pink will be next year.
Piedmont would be next year, okay.
Before I state the question, Mark, obviously we're delighted, this is great. And we want it done. A little inconvenience is okay. Having said that, there are days of the week or even times of the day that would certainly might be advantageous for us not to be doing it. Did we get any input on that? I can understand maybe when they start we don't, but for example, Tuesdays and Wednesdays are Thursdays are pretty quiet days here, at least in the sense of the B&Bs. I suppose it's not true of people who work here. Now, taking back what I'm saying. Anyway, do we get any input along the way when they're starting work? They call 24 hours early, that we start tomorrow, they'll live with.
If there are any specific days or time frames that you want us to avoid for 2019, we could certainly put that into the schedule. 2018, the roads, there's some general time frames that are set in the contract, and we can certainly talk with the contractor about any restrictions, but it's...
Do we do that through you?
Yes, you do that definitely through me, let me know.
Any questions from public? If not, thank you, man, we're delighted.
You're welcome.
You can start tomorrow if you want.
But,
And not give us warning.
yeah. But yeah, if you have any questions at all afterwards, you know where to find me, and I'll be happy to get you the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is Bonnie Moore, who's here representing, or working with Unedited, Washington. I've been lucky enough to know Bonnie for probably 30 years, 25 years, so for all transparency, we are friends and I've known her for a long time. And she worked at the inn in the kitchen for quite some number of years, so she does know how to cook. And has had her own consulting operation in Alexandria, Arlington, one of those, they all merge. And is now working for Patrick on the 40th anniversary series of extravaganzas. And there's one that's going to be held, which has been in the press, but there's been a lot of attention to one in France and one in Mount Vernon. But the implications of the event that's scheduled for Labor Day weekend are really quite positive and important, not only for the town but for the county, and has great ramifications, positive ones, I think, for the town and the county as a whole. So with that, Bonnie, do you want to do a little presentation of this?
Excuse myself in discussion.
Okay.
Would you like a chair, Bonnie, to come forward, or? I'm going to sit up to the side.
Bonnie, you face the challenge of talking to us and the community at large at the same time, so, or at least attempting to.
I stand right here.
That's it.
So my name is Bonnie Moore. I worked with Patrick in the kitchen many years ago and lived in Little Washington and have many fond memories of being a resident of the town. And happy to be back working with the inn on the milestone occasion of the 40th anniversary. Patrick has a year of celebrations planned, and as John, Mr. Mayor mentioned, significantly I'm here to speak about the Culinary Festival in Little Washington, which is very special. We have plans to bring back all of the alumni who worked at the inn and the chefs who are now scattered all over the country to come back home and cook at the Culinary Festival. We are calling this In Stock, and we are channeling Woodstock in the idea, and here is a little visual presentation.
I see it again.
Pass that around, but let's closer look. So In Stock is a culinary festival that will take place on Enid's property. As I said, chefs from around the country who have cooked at the inn will be coming back home and cooking for that. Patrick very much wants to celebrate the relationships over the 40 years, particularly the relationships in the town, in the county, and in Virginia. Celebrate his relationships with Virginia wines, a lot of the Virginia products, hams, cheeses, things like that, people that have worked here. We would like to offer the town residents, by the way, the admission for In Stock will be $250 for a ticket, and that will include food and beverage. Patrick would like to offer the town residents a free admission to that event, which amounts to about $33,000 worth of tickets to the town. We would like to work with the town to promote this. It's a great opportunity to show off this fabulous town and the surrounding county as a tourist destination to a much broader audience than we typically reach at the inn on a regular basis. We have the ability, we anticipate having 500 and probably more attend In Stock on a Sunday of Labor Day weekend. And there's certainly the opportunity. I've been talking with the mayor. I've also been talking with Teresa with the Rappahannock Business Alliance about bringing together some tours that could happen on Saturday, could happen on Monday. It is a long weekend. So we have the opportunity to bring people in, not just for this one day, but for an entire 3-day weekend, and hopefully bring them back again and again and again, because it's such a great place to come visit. Great weekend away from Big Washington or wherever else people may be coming from. We would like to promote this. We have a huge press effort going behind the 40th anniversary, and we've already received a lot of traction with the press. We're happy about that. We would like to promote the town in the press effort, particularly with regard to In Stock, and partner with the town for more promotion on what we can do on our In at 40 website, in the press releases, at the event itself. And what I'd like to ask is that, I should also tell you that this is a replicable event of all of the events that we're doing for the 40th anniversary. This is something that can happen on an annual basis and continue to generate interest in coming to Little Washington. It is not inexpensive. It's a very expensive venture. The inn will not be serving dinner that night to the public, so we will be shutting that down. And the logistics, particularly for a large-scale event, the first time around, we're going to have to put a sizable amount of money towards that and towards the promotion of it. And in exchange for the admissions for town residents, the promotion of the town, we're going to work very closely on how we do that. We'd like to ask for $5,000 to help us in the promotion of this event. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Bonnie, would you talk a little bit about what the event is and what's going to happen during the day in terms of?
The event is probably going to start
Maybe it's all
late afternoon, evening, and there'll be a series of booths with chefs, with food, and with beverages. The Virginia wineries will be here. I hope to have other beverage components from the area. There will be music, for sure, talking about different ways that we can work together on the music as well. And there will be fireworks. The music, of course, anybody can listen to from the county, etc., and the fireworks too. It will be something that everybody can watch and find their favorite viewing space in town and scope that out.
So you sort of see it, I mean, I know you just said it's kind of before, not to be precise, but like 4 until 10:30 or something, whatever.
In that time, we're working out the specific logistics, but somewhere in the 4 to 5 o'clock start time, or the 10 to 11 o'clock close time.
Well, anyway, folks have questions, comments? Council vote, or must have some kind of questions. This sounds good.
It will be fun.
My backyard.
I have a question. It's very serious. I should address it to Patrick. This whole business about in-stock is a rip-off to Woodstock. Are you guaranteeing no mud, not too many drugs, not too many traffic jams,
No guarantees.
and all kinds of hospital issues?
I can guarantee none of those.
Patrick, maybe Joni Mitchell will write a song about it.
You never know,
Maybe she'll come.
You never know.
and maybe this time.
One thing that has been talked about, which I want to mention, which I don't know if still is in your thinking, that it might make sense to close down a block or two. Maybe back up here. One of the things that you didn't really see, most or a lot of this is going to be on the in-property, which of course is, you all know where that is, but, and of course, the property where the farmer's market is. So, there's going to be a lot of people who wander around in their stores in the town, obviously, B&Bs, that it might make a lot of sense to close down a couple of blocks with the approval of the sheriff, with the approval of EDOT, with everybody thinking it makes sense in such a way that does not dramatically impede people getting from point A to point B. And that's still something you're thinking about, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you really have a town center gig. To be imprecise in my term. Parking will be an issue, but it's the same issue that we face with Halloween and the Christmas parade. There is the who is responsible for the parking, and logistical issues that are.
Police, police.
And we obviously would talk to Connie and the sheriff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an in event, but the town is central to this thing, so we've got, you know, and to some extent, the county is, not responsible, but going to be impacted
Beneficiary.
by I mean, just to be literal, I mean, and I'm just being candid. I mean, when I first read about this, I thought, oh, okay, he is doing something unrelated. They were it sounds like it's really going to be fun, and okay, great. But when you put it somewhat differently, that maybe 500 or 600 or 700 people can show up to this county for 3 days, 2 or 3 days, and the inn is only doing something on one day. Those people got to do something Saturday and Monday, it's Labor Day weekend. So the potential impact on businesses throughout the county are potentially huge. It is unlike or in contrast to something like the Christmas parade at Washington, which is 500 people come, it's one day, they leave, nobody in Sperryville benefits, nobody in Flint Hill, you know, it's just a one-day gig. Here are a lot of people who are going to come here for 2 or 3 days and have a presumably very positive account. Any questions from
I have a question.
the great good eye?
Logistically, and maybe this is too early for you to know, but it occurs to me that if people have to have tickets to get in, how is that going to be managed logistically?
We'll manage that. We're working with the production company to work on all of those details and coordinate it on how and there'll be checkpoints on how people can enter the specific festival itself, where food and beverage will be served. People can enjoy the fireworks and the music from wherever they may be.
It just seems to me that has this little town with few points of access. That's going to be a major problem.
Well, the festival will be on in property, and that's where the checkpoints will be for people to gain access to those areas. The festival proper.
A ticket or a lanyard or something.
Yeah, we'll have wristbands and
Wristbands.
we'll find a way to disseminate wristbands to the, or some mechanism to town residents, excuse me, so that they would have their admission to the event.
this would be great.
Yeah.
And I think we all heard your request for the town to contribute in some fashion, actually specific fashion. Why don't you let us talk about that and various issues and see whether there's support, or maybe talk about people that have questions. We've had some issues with this in the past, well, has to be quick.
I think it's a wonderful idea, and I think it's great for the town to participate in it. I also have complete faith that the money will be used wisely, but it would be nice to have some kind of idea of either a budget of how it will be used or some kind of accounting for the funds. I think we have a responsibility to the people, to the townsfolk, to just...
Sure, and if you'd like to make a specific request that that money be spent specifically on promotion or...
As I said, I have complete faith that it will be spent well and wisely, and I certainly don't want to constrain the wiser people than me in that. But I just think it is important for us as a town to have some kind of accounting or some kind of sense of how the funds would be used, so that we can report back to the town.
Sure.
I think we should have, there should be a specific definition for what those funds would be used for, which is something to be looked at, so it's clear.
I would recommend that it be for promotion, but if you all have another request, please bring forward.
I don't think we're going to decide right now, but I want to make sure Mr. Bennett is comfortable with some aspects. Anyway, this is terrific.
We'd very much like to work
Thank
with you on how that promotion shapes up,
Yeah.
and hope that the town and the county will put together some activity or some organization of what people could do on Saturday and on the Monday, and I think that would be something that we could help with the promotion of.
Because Bonnie and I talked, for example, that one would presumably want to distribute to everybody who comes to town in advance, and while we're here, kind of what can you do Saturday, what can you do Monday? So you drive traffic to places outside the town as well as inside.
And
Bonnie
another
did
thing-
tell me she went to Wiseman's the other day and discovered how wonderful it is.
On the line of duty. Another thing that we could provide is sort of a data summary of the people who attend in stock, if that would be useful to your promotions for tourism down the road.
Might be interesting.
Might be worthwhile to find one of the farm tour brochures, because that lists all the wineries and everything else. So something along that line might be a great handout to
We
someone.
can
to say,
hand that out. If it
Yeah.
were electronic, we could link to it from the website, we could link
Yeah.
to it from a press release. Those are all of the kinds of promotions that we're interested in working with you on.
Yeah, so the farm tour has a nice little brochure, and I think between that and the art festival and everything else, you know, I think they probably identify every single opportunity in the county and how you move it outside the county.
And 15 years ago, the town and the county each separately took out an ad in the 25th anniversary magazine, and they used that opportunity to list the businesses in the fashion that they wanted to, organize by category and promote them that way. Now, obviously, with electronic assets that we have today, we can do much more of that.
Are you looking to mainly pre-sale tickets? or-
Absolutely. And I believe this will be sold out. The tickets for this event have been selling very, very well.
That's what I was wondering.
And we haven't
So
really
there won't be
begun to
maybe a
sell
lot
it
of
all.
other people just coming into town just to see fireworks, then it'll be mainly people that pre-bought a ticket.
I actually disagree.
Well, maybe from the local area.
Oh, yeah.
DC, I don't think
Misinterpreted
people are driving
what
out
you're
there
saying,
just
yeah.
to hang out for the day.
I
and
agree, I
not do
misinterpreted what you're saying.
It's like when the garden club had their big tour, didn't they pre-sell the tickets?
Yeah.
And did
Well, they pre-sold them, though you could buy them on the spot,
Right, that's
but
right. Did they close the streets off for that?
for the garden club, no.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, one last,
Sure.
I don't know if it's a question or a comment, but one of the things that we have later in our agenda is developing some task force to kind of move forward with the town. And one of the task force may be involved in tourism development. Is it possible that task force can coordinate with you all to make sure not to interfere with what you're doing, but to make sure that whatever promotion the town does intersects and complements what's being done.
Absolutely. We'd like to work very closely with the town and the county
Great,
to get a win-win for everybody.
great. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bonnie. Very exciting. Any other thoughts on that subject? Okay. Let us move from paving the streets from paving the streets at Instock to more mundane. The draft minutes November 13th, I think, do not exist. Laura was working on those, and Laura went home very sick today. But they are going to be completed soon. Treasurer's report.
Thank you. Total consolidated assets of the town of Washington as of January 31st were $538,372.71. During that same period, the Washington Water Works total consolidated assets were $13,508.34, and the wastewater's consolidated assets were $8,195.24. During the month of January, we pumped 1,536,000 gallons of water, backwashed 34,300, leaving us 1,501,700 gallons, billable gallons. We billed 1,066,435 gallons, leaving us a total of 435,265 treated gallons not yet billed. Town income for January 2018 was $34,945.26. The Washington Water Works income for January 2018 was $8,429.80, and the wastewater income was $12,717.33. Attached are the bills to be paid and the additional bills. I don't think there's anything unusual, and they seem to be quite low this month, which is good. But if there's any questions, I will try to do my best to answer them. Other than that, that's all I have.
Any questions? Let me just add, this is quick and dirty, but it's accurate. You go for those things. The town finances for the seven months through January on sort of a profit and loss basis. Last year, through the first 7 months, we had a negative of about $40,000 bottom line. This year, through 7 months, we have a positive of about $40,000. So there's a turnaround of whatever that is, $78,000. The sort of drivers in that, meals and lodging is up, but not by very much, only about 2-3%. And then there's been significant savings on the expense side. 2 areas, one being wastewater plant maintenance and operations, excuse me. We've had many less issues that have had to be dealt with and solved at some expense. So far, that's been the case. Last year, to remind, was a very, very cold winter, and we had a lot of problems. And we also are saving quite a bit of money on legal fees. That continues. So that's kind of...
And we raised the rates.
Yeah, and the revenue, the wastewater and the water rates, you know, they're both up something like 20% each, I think. Okay, so I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Okay, I'll record me. I'm doing some very crude notes for Laura, and I'll just record.
Okay. Did it great.
Okay.
Planning Commission, Mr. Captain.
I will defer until, we met, we went over and had some recommendations for the, person-to-person short-term rental, draft ordinance, and they have been incorporated in the notes, and I see that's on old business under A, so I will defer to that one.
Okay. ARB is meeting, I think it's next Wednesday, excuse me, on a relatively minor request. Town attorney? Okay, old business, the draft ordinance to address P&P, otherwise known as Airbnbs. To remind everybody, Mr. Bennett put together a draft, something we've discussed off and on for quite some months. Mr. Bennett put together a draft for us to work with of the new ordinance. The Planning Commission, which Fred just referred to, has made some suggested changes. And those changes are on documents in front of you, so when you pick them up. And everybody knows it's a sort of, well, it's contentious, it's a complicated issue, let's put it that way, which everybody around the country, if not the world, is still dealing with, and certainly the county is as well. We defer to John and Fred. What's your sense of how we best approach this? What we've got is the Bennett proposed ordinance with the changes suggested by the Planning Commission. That might be the easiest document to work with.
Yes, there was a document that listed the changes individually. That is not there. So what I think I can do is I can go over those as soon as I can find them. And then you can see them more easily with the, in the new document.
Actually, I think that's a lot.
Did you?
There you go.
All right, so the draft, yeah, I've got it right here on the computer. So basically, what we have is under 612 subsection 1, standard 2, should be such use shall be a single family dwelling, which we put in. We recommended that standard 3 be deleted. We recommended for standard 4 should be adequate and safe entry upon a public street shall be provided. Standard 5, the operator shall reside on the premises and be a full-time resident of the town. Standard 7 should read, the use shall not include assembly uses, including but not limited to receptions, weddings, funerals, or other events involving persons other than the persons using the overnight lodge. We also had some additional parts which are down as standards 9 and 10. Operator shall furnish certification from Airbnb or other reputable person-to-person short-term rental agency that indicates that the recipient is in good standing. We felt that was very important. And finally, there should be a sheet with emergency procedures and contacts that will be posted plainly within the premises for guests. That must be submitted to the town clerk at the time of initial registration. So in other words, if the water heater goes out, that the guests have a number to call.
Like wastewater.
Yeah.
Just to be clear here, these are being disseminated for discussion, thinking purposes. The question tonight, there's no decision to be made tonight other than we want to vote to have a public hearing. But we do actually, having said that, we're going to vote for a public hearing, we've got to answer the questions. John, do you have any thoughts on the subject? Just so we're doing everything proper.
Just, I have a few
I have a
comments.
few questions about the thing, so.
I have a few comments, and I'm not saying that the answer is this or the answer is this. It's just some things to consider. To go back to the red line version, when it went in and came out, does it make sense to have as a matter of ordinance that these uses won't exceed a given number of persons? Or, I think you want to address that issue in some fashion, or you want it understood that that's not specified, but it would be addressed as a condition on each permit on a case-by-case basis. If it's a big house, it could be 8 people. If it's a small house, it could be 2 persons. But it would seem that council would want to evaluate what physical facilities are and make sure that facilities can adequately handle the people that would be there in one night, which is to do that for most other uses anyway. So it's just a question in my mind how you do it, but it seems to me it's better if you do it on a case-by-case basis as adding it as a condition, because it could be a wide range depending on the physical size of the structure. So that would come back in talking points to be added, that it would be a condition to be evaluated on each application. That would be my first thing for everybody to think about. The single-family dwelling, that's seems to be a better way to word it to me than the appearance of. The number 3, I think parking is always an issue, and it's best addressed in some fashion at the time of the application. Now, how do you address it, and what's the best way to do it? I think it's the same thing we just talked about the number of people. It really is a case-by-case basis, and one approach would just be to say that demonstrate adequate parking and not have any specific number, 1 per room or whatever. So there could be some combination of off-street and on-street parking, depending on where it was located in town. Some places might be appropriate in town to have on-street parking. Others might not, and you'd want everything off-street. But in some fashion, for every use, parking is always evaluated, and usually there's performance standards, but we're trying to be as flexible as possible on this, so I would come back to the approach that perhaps you just want to add it as a condition that you'd evaluate and then make a determination when you review each one based on the site specific.
What would you define as adequate? Within 100 yards?
Again, that sort of depends on the envisioned use in my mind. And if there's one room that's going to have 2 persons and maybe 2 children, then that's 1 car. That's 4 persons. And that's one thing that you have to deal with. If there's such thing as single rooms, that creates a different situation. There's more cars. And so you evaluate how many cars you have to deal with, and then the optimal solution is there off-street parking? And if there is, that ends it. But if not, then you have to evaluate the off-street parking. But if not, then you're back to the on-street parking. And again, I think it depends on there is no one answer, 100 yards, 50 yards, whatever. It depends on the section of town, the traffic flows in that area. You don't want to inconvenience the people that are already using it. And so it just is something we figured out on a case-by-case basis by looking at the specifics of what might happen.
Does that then make the town council vulnerable to the charge of being arbitrary?
You know, anytime you get into legislative actions, the standard is you can't be arbitrary or capricious. So what I would say is this is an authority that you have that can't be exercised in an arbitrary or capricious fashion, which that I've never seen it done, exercised in that fashion in other matters, so this would be no exception in my view. And you're going to sit here and have a discussion and you're not going to do something that's completely off the wall. And then, the operation of reside on premises to be a resident, full-time resident of the town. So, there's some things that might result in and might not result in. I know what's being said there, that there's some things that I've sort of thought of, but I'm not prepared to get, but I see what's said, and the concept is
And this was
appealing, yeah.
among, and Caroline can back this up, among the planning commission members, I think this is a very important point.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And we determined generally as full-time as being at least 50%, 51% of the time. Was that your recollection?
51%.
Yeah, and you may have a better guide for what a full-time resident is.
Yes, it's a factual question. It's not the same as voting or something like that. And this is something to be determined. You're not using a resident in the sense of qualifying for voting or something like that, which means that you tend to lay your head in the jurisdiction on a permanent basis to the exclusion of others, but that doesn't mean you stay there for a majority of the year necessarily. So here I think you want a tighter standard is what you're talking about, and it makes a lot of sense. I thought, well, one person owns 2 properties, it would still work out. So I was just trying to think through the permutations, but I get the concept, and I just wanted to make sure there's no permutation that might cause a problem. But it seems to me that you just got to define the standard there.
And put it the definitions, and then you just have to say full-time.
Yeah, full-time resident, meaning 51%.
What does, you sort of addressed it, but isn't an issue, what is a resident?
Well,
Which is to say, is it a person who is here a lot, but may have a voting thing in Peoria? Or must it be someone who is a legal resident of the town, votes here, you know, et cetera, et cetera?
that would be one of the things to be defined. You could go either way.
That's why we
Property.
have a lawyer.
It and live here.
Yeah.
Full-time.
I can make a 4 copy. So, I think you certainly want it as a physical test. You don't want it in the normal legal sense as for voting purposes, that you want somebody that's here all the time.
Here, I mean, you sort of like know who it is, it's
Right.
how you define it.
And I think that was part of it, is that it's someone that people know in the community who's doing this. I don't think members of the planning commission thought about someone who may have 3 or 4 properties who are doing this. They had been thinking, I think, more 1-to-1, someone having 1 property and doing this.
So that would be a restriction then.
You know, primary residence, man.
Yeah.
Full-time resident or primary residence.
Although we did not entertain that someone might have multiple residences. So I can't speak for the planning commission on that, but I can say that the idea that it was someone, as the mayor said, who was known in the community was an important aspect, and however we can frame that.
So if you were to say reside on the premises and make a requirement the number of days also for residing on those particular premises as well as the town, and specific to that thing. So one person couldn't have 3 houses.
Caroline, that was your sense, wasn't it, when we were in the planning commission, that we were really thinking about one person having one residence, not one
Yeah,
person
I
having
think so,
3 or
but
4
I-
residences?
I'm troubled by the idea that you would say how many days, because, how are you going to enforce that? I think it's the spirit of it is most people know who are the people who are here as residents in the town of Washington. I think that was essentially the spirit of it. And I think there should be a way to define that in a way that doesn't require enforcement, that nobody's going to be able to do.
Well, we're certainly enforcement by trying to count the number of days.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a good point.
that's too much, that's too onerous.
Well, that would be something to flesh out, take a look at, and make sure it suits everybody.
There's an English teacher in the room, maybe she can help you with the wordage.
I think she'd help with a lot more, but. Number 7. You say these things, but, lawyers like a bright line, as I always say. You're either on this side or you're on that side. When there's a whole lot of in the middle, it becomes something that becomes less clear, less enforceable, less of a information to the public of what they can and can't do. So on these things, you don't want any of these things. In addition, is there something sort of catch-all that functions wouldn't exceed a specific number of people? Or would activities on the premises be limited to only those people that are renting? Okay. That's overnight guests.
Yeah, I mean, my only question is, it's a specific, let's say someone's got a house, they got 2 bedrooms in it, 2 couples come out. They know each other, they know people in the county, 4 people come over and have a drink or something, or an hors d'oeuvre or whatever. Is that good or is that bad? I mean, is that, how tight sort of how tight do you draw?
Yeah, and again, I think
I don't really have an answer, just throwing it out there.
Well, I think one of the things that the planning commission kept coming back to over and over again as they were looking through these is there isn't a large enforceable arm within the town.
Right.
And so we were trying to put things in that didn't require Laura or the mayor or somebody else going around knocking on door and counting how many heads are there or how many cars are parked there or things like that. So that was...
Those are practical matters, neighbors will.
Kind of
That's right.
Yeah,
Police, if,
I view that there is an enforcement mechanism that you can revoke the privilege. And that would be the way you draft these SUPs, so they don't do what they said they're going to do, and what they sort of contract with council, this is the way it's going to work out. And if it doesn't, you put in there that it's subject to review and revocation. So those things have the information and everything has a way of calling it out. And then, I just want to make sure I understand number 9 better, what's to be accomplished there. Just so I make sure I understand it as far as drafting and that type of thing.
I think, speaking as an educator, I know families are more interested in a school that is accredited or seen to be in good standing with a reputable educational association than one that is not. And I think for us, instead of us trying to impose some kind of standard of fair practice and quality of vocation, if you have another agency that is ensuring that people are not getting ripped off, that there is a quality, a certain level of quality in terms of the hospitality, in terms of the quality of the residents, that is not falling down around someone's shoulders. That, I think, was the gist behind number 9.
Because aren't there internet sites that just purely list things, and there they are, and there's no organization behind it or anything like that? But, I know there are vacation things.
Well, effectively, you could put a house or a room up on Craigslist. No, nothing behind that.
No.
So I kind of think number 9 might be a little difficult to. I don't disagree with the intent of the planning commission. I think it's a good idea because it essentially establishes a quality or some basis. But even with Airbnb, do they actually inspect properties or check them out? You just sign up, don't you?
I'll keep pretty close tabs because they get feedback from each stay.
Okay.
It modifies their rating and everything like that. And operators that I've come across that are really into it and running a good show, they're very, they don't want
Yeah.
to leave a word.
But if you have this, could someone say, well, that's restraint of trade? If I don't have a certification, you're telling me I can't have this SUP?
No, I mean, you can impose reasonable standards, and as long as there's a reasonable relation to what you're trying to accomplish, that things like that are within the broad range of matters that a legislative body can decide. How many different, really, organizations are there that in effect, is there Airbnb and...
Vacation rentals by owner.
Is that direct, though? Is that, do they have the ratings and all that stuff there? They
Reviews.
do, okay. Vacations?
Vacation rentals by owner.
PRO.
So, the other question is, if you took these ones that are pretty organized and have feedback and monitor, what percentage of the market does that cover? Does that pretty well cover it? So, you're not really hurting anybody. So, it certainly seems to me to make a whole lot of sense, and it's just a question of how you ultimately draft it. And then the sheet with emergency procedures, my only comment there would be what emergency procedures, et cetera, do you really want to address and need to set those out? What do you really want addressed up front? Be posted.
The emergency procedures is probably very bluntly how to get out of the place quickly. B would be who to call in terms of emergency procedures. You obviously have 911 in the community. And then in terms of, again, if there is some kind of mechanical breakdown, that's going to be fundamental. I mean,
part of what happens is anybody who stays at a place in Washington, Virginia, they stay there a night, they stay 2 nights. If they have a lousy experience because the water heater blew out and they couldn't get a hold of somebody, or it was disreputably managed, it's going to cast a shadow on the town of Washington, on everything that the inn is trying to do, that all the other B&Bs and all the other people in this community are trying to put together. And I think part of it is that we want to make anyone's stay as enjoyable and as safe as possible.
Fred, can I just add to that? This is from the
Yeah.
point of view of the planning commission. I mean, I do think this issue of reputational risk, and we talked a lot about what's the reputational risk for the town if there are bad experiences out there. And referring back to the previous one, number 9, I think there are we put the word reputable in because we thought that we should only be thinking about people using those companies that do have certification. Again, whether that certification is official by Airbnb or whether it's through crowdsourcing that people put their reviews up. But you don't want to have rentals where I've got a whole series of rentals got lousy reviews in Little Washington. So I think that issue of the certification, one way or another, is important. But I don't think I think it's a limited universe of these reputable, however you want to define that, person-to-person organizations. So I don't think it's rocket science to do that.
And I think if you talk to the fire marshal, they can give you some things for the emergency procedures. And then it's probably, any one of us probably sit down and think of 4 or 5 kind of, electrician, mechanical, HVAC, whatever.
And you just get micro here. One of the biggest things that needs to be really publicized, if you will, is what happens if you have sewage issues.
Right.
Because that is something where a person needs a number, the guy call them, and not only is an issue the reputation of their, coming in from their experience, but there are real implications to those problems not being dealt with promptly.
Yeah,
And as an aside, we need to do a better job of educating town residents with number to call. But that's that's a problem with some frequency.
So essentially, my comments are just fine tuning what's already here.
Well, how should we proceed here? I'm looking to both Fred and John, so what do you think in terms of moving them ahead of it?
I think a lot of it is drafting and some wordsmithing by John.
I think we should try to have a comprehensive draft that everybody can look at and mark up and reach a consensus. And if that can be done at the next meeting, which I think we're pretty close to, there's a good chance it can.
And then
move on to advertise.
at the next meeting, we'd presumably vote to advertise a public hearing 2 months from now.
I think everybody needs to see.
Yeah. See it one.
Yeah.
One thing that's not mentioned there, and I don't know if this is the place, but it's something about signage, whether they can have signage or not. I was down there Massanutten last week, and there was an Airbnb, had a big sign up front, said, had the name of it, highly recommended, Airbnb since 2012, phone number, the whole thing. You don't want to see that kind of showing up on everybody's down the street. They put their phone numbers and such.
We could make that explicit. It's not permitted, so, but we could take the next step and put that on.
Something about signage.
I was going to say something.
Yeah, it's not permitted, so, but we can make it explicit.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to ask Fred, if you all considered putting anything in about the use of alcohol, because the legislation in the state says that operators must obtain a B&B ABC license if they want to serve alcoholic beverages to their guests. Airbnb.
Truthfully, we did not address that issue.
I didn't know if that was something you wanted to put in here.
Do people usually bring their own Airbnb? Just the host usually sort of, usually that involved with the people.
No, I don't care.
Are they that involved? I mean, I haven't been to an Airbnb, but the people that go to an Airbnb, they're kind of on their own, aren't they? It's,
I've used one and there was not any alcohol,
unless you brought your own.
unless we brought our own.
I went to one that gave us a bottle of wine and was left. Happy to see us go.
I have been in Airbnb where they provided wine.
Really,
I
what?
think that is something maybe that should be addressed.
Isn't it already?
Yes, you do. You still have.
That strikes me as also kind of, maybe I misunderstand. You've got a you sort of don't know someone, first of all, it's, and I hadn't thought about this issue, but as I am now, seems to be, not that many Airbnbs are going to exist, or maybe a lot. Very few people, I would suspect, are going to offer free alcohol to people staying there. And if they do, how much of a problem is that? On the one hand, and is it worth requiring, if I understand this right, every one of these to get a approval from ABC to distribute what?
It's probably their
And
responsibility.
how would you ever monitor it? I mean, how would we?
Well, we don't monitor
Well, ABC.
anybody now, so.
Yeah, I mean,
we
it's
can
certainly-
see it.
ABC monitors it.
Right.
Well, certainly it's a cumbersome solution.
Yeah, it's just in the state legislation, the Virginia law that was passed on Airbnbs.
Oh, with regard to that part.
So I didn't know if that, we wanted to include that. The other thing, can you go back to number 9 again, about the operator shall furnish a certificate? Well, these are people applying for a special use permit to open an Airbnb, correct? So how would they have had any certification because they're just starting it?
Right, I thought of that too. I was thinking that we would maybe review it in a year, and then what are we gonna do, look at the reviews, and
But-
oh, you had 7 beds. and you
But they
had
haven't
12.
started yet, they're.
And you have to wait for the
Yeah,
first year,
right.
and then we're gonna tell them they have to shut down because they got some bad reviews.
Well,
They're
then-
very good at doing this.
What you should, maybe then what we have to say is, will be required to obtain certification.
You know,
But they can't do that until they.
Well, yeah,
business
yeah.
and have some
Business.
Right, that's why I put it in
What
the
do you
future.
say? Got 6 months, okay? Because this way it allows them to start, and at 6 months, they can get a review. And maybe only have one
I
guest.
don't know if that's the town's responsibility.
Well,
You tell them that now you've got to close because you got some bad reviews.
well, I don't think they're gonna get into that.
Well,
Well, it sounds like that's what they're
we didn't, the certification for us was not just because they had a review. The
Right.
certification was that Airbnb or whatever the appropriate agency said this is a organization or whatever you call it, entity in good standing. That really was what we were looking at when we were going through this. So, your point is well taken, so that you may say that they need to be signed up with Airbnb, and put it in the future tense rather than into present tense.
going back to the discussion we just had, that if you specify the things that you want addressed, and somebody comes here to make an application, they have to have thought those things through and give you what they're gonna do, so you can see it. Right then and there, it's done. I mean, you've got listed all the things you want addressed. After our other discussion just now, you're gonna flush it out, put all those things in there, so it's more specific. So they would have addressed all those points when they come before you, so you can evaluate how they are or aren't doing it.
Does Airbnb have a process for accepting people, or Anybody
Yes.
just go out.
Yes, they do. You have to meet certain standards to be taken into Airbnb. And I think our feeling was, rather than the town setting all the standards, why couldn't we use the standards that others have, which makes it somewhat easier. Where we think there are gaps, they'll worry us, then we can put another standard in. But we don't want to have to invent all these things if there are organizations which already have them.
And I don't think we want to police them all either.
So then should,
No, go ahead.
should the ordinance then be that you provide evidence that you've submitted? If you're coming first in the very beginning, obviously you're not going to have reviews, but have evidence that you've submitted to.
Right.
which
An application or whatever.
Yeah, and there may be multiple that you're submitting because you want to be on different sites or through different organizations. So at least if you have that as part of your application, and then at such time, at a review point, if it's reviewed annually, whatever, then we can take a look.
Right.
You come back and you say, well, here's my, now I can show you that I'm in good state
Right.
because we've had all these, but at least initially that you're doing that. Because then, again, because that, if you have that, some sort of evidence, then that would take out the Craigslist listers.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what you're trying to do, is deviate away from that kind of situation.
May I, wait, Sean, would you?
Yes, I just was wondering, do the regular B&Bs get a liquor license? Or
Yes.
maybe they have to have one, so, okay. And my other thought was, farmers out in from the area around town, they can get land use if they have animals or whatever. But the people in town, I mean, this is a very rural area, so they need some help. So I guess that's why they're trying to even have a room rented or whatever, so they can make ends meet.
Yeah.
So if the outer areas can get land use if they have animals or whatever, they don't have that privilege here in town. There's not always enough space in their little yard. You have to have like 10 acres to have farm use. So, but it's kind of getting complicated for them to even try to even live here. A lot of people have to move out of the county and go to another county because they can't make ends meet here. But it just sounds like it's a lot of trouble just to rent out a room or something. You have land use. What do you do if you don't have land to have land use? So it's like, it's getting very complicated for them to try to even survive. So then they just move out of the county.
That's a question for you, Gary. I lost track. Where is the county in its ordinance with regard to Airbnbs? I pay attention, but I lost track, I'm not sure.
Well, it's on the book. There was some discussion over the appropriate acreage, and the planning commission hasn't met the last 2 meetings due to quorum issues. They will be talking about the zoning amendments at the next meeting.
In the county, our Airbnbs is in the tourist homes.
So it falls within the category in the county code called tourist homes.
Because there've been a lot of applications recently. Seems like.
Look at the piece of paper we have here. Well, may I suggest that we go back to where we were a second. John, do you want to try and come up with a draft? But I would recommend, Fred, if you're willing, why don't you, well, that'd be great if the two of you came back to the next meeting with a document that you all agreed on.
And I'll share it with the
And you can
planning
share it with, whatever. And so we have something that's clean, agreed on by you folks, and then we'll,
Mr. Bennett, will the existing Airbnbs have to come back and reapply for a special use permit?
I don't think there are any existing Airbnbs that have been recognized by the town. So
Well,
everybody,
there are.
well, I mean, maybe in a de facto sense, but nobody's obtained any permanent license from the town.
Her question's a good one. Do we go to those people and say, all right, we now know what it is is that,
That was the understanding at the time, that the
yeah,
town would develop an ordinance and.
so I think we should go back to
That they did.
those one or two who are doing it.
Everybody's the rules.
Here are the rules.
Yeah, here, it's fair for everyone.
Is that, is it, you, that's your
Well, that's
point.
what I was asking.
That's your
yeah.
point.
Because some of these things that are in here, some of the existing Airbnbs don't have like a dwelling appearance of a single family. That's why I was asking.
Well, do your question. It's big.
Is there a situation where a structure not appearing as a single-family dwelling would be appropriate for an Airbnb?
I think the one that we have now is probably appropriate.
Yeah.
And how would that be, I'm not entirely certain, but how would that deviate from a single-family dwelling?
It doesn't look like
It
one.
does look like it's a business.
Are we talking about the business downstairs and
Yeah.
Yeah,
What are we talking about?
Upstairs.
the small. The small. The one was small.
Well, that's an interesting question. In my mind, that appears like residence. If the mixed use, if there's commercial use on the first floor and an apartment on the second, that appears like a residence in my mind, in a mixed use.
Single family dwelling.
Did it say single family or
Yeah.
are we at because I don't know that you necessarily want
It's a
that.
question.
Yeah, single family dwelling. That overlooked that, but, Airbnb uses are often appropriate in the structure that's a mixed-use structure. Storefronts and an apartment up, and some of those are, the best uses for that type of thing. Because they're in a district that has a more intensive commercial orientation to start out with.
I think we're agreeing with
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's what they're getting at, single family would have to come out, but we're gonna have to figure out exactly what the standard is.
Okay, shall we move on? Mr. Peters, I'm sorry you're last on the list here.
Stay away.
Task Force Committees and Appointments update. This has to do with the notion that we want to have, whatever they are called, advisory committees, whatever the terminology is, that the Planning Commission has pushed for, that focus on 4 or 5 different areas of concern that involve some combination of town council member, planning commission, citizens at large, in some form, some combination. And the last meeting, we went through what those 5 committees might be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah. And there were some, we never really concluded, and I think we should make some headway here. And I guess when you get down to it is, the 5 committees without, the 5 advisory councils, whatever we want to call them. There's one on infrastructure, one on business development, one on tourism development, one on housing, and one is financial and administrative. And I think it would be helpful to get from anybody on the council, or indeed citizens at large, some indication whether one might want to be actively involved in one of these groups. I mean, did discuss in one of the de facto, Brad, given his experience and issues, is sort of the obvious and strong person to be head of or in charge of the infrastructure. But I guess what I'd like to flesh out, are there things, areas that individuals would particularly like to get involved with? I'm not sure it's a job requirement, but maybe it is. I don't know. If I recall correctly, both Mary Ann and Patrick expressed interest in being involved in tourism development. The issue of how many people from which body are on a given commission, I think we sort of be a little bit loose about. Let's find people who have expertise, who want to work and be involved, and then we'll figure out the precise structure.
And if necessary, I could add that if you have, you can have, I guess, up to 2 town council members on any one of these task forces, but also if you have a town council member who wants to serve on 2 of these in case otherwise they wouldn't be addressed, that might be a feasibility.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me, I'm sort of trying to put, Fred, are the ones that you in particular would like to, I can make some suggestions, but.
I'd be happy to work with housing and wherever else you would like me to work, either business development or financial.
Well, okay, let me leave that where that's. Pat, Brad?
I would say financial, because I think that ties in with some of the infrastructure long-term.
Mary Ann?
Tourism and or business development.
Jerry, by definition, seems to me you would be involved in financial.
Yeah. Are we looking just for people on the council to?
No.
Or we're looking to?
No, we're looking to involve as many people as possible, it's just we're sort of starting with the council.
Okay.
So the next step is I'm gonna, let's just look at what we've done so far. Fred or Caroline, not that you're really speaking for them, but do you have a sense where Alan Comp, I imagine, would like to be involved in one of these, or 2 of them? You're not speaking for him, but do you have a sense of?
I would say housing.
That's what I would guess based on,
Yeah, Alan,
I mean, that's based on what he can do with.
right, he mentioned to me he was interested in the infrastructure issue as well.
Okay. And Gary H. might be very good on that too. Anyway, a lot of side people who aren't here yet. Ms. Anstey is a planning commission person. Would you like to be involved in any one of these in particular? And skip over whether there's already 1 or 2 people who said yes to the committee.
Yeah, I guess number 2, business development.
Well, as for myself, I'm unsure. I want to have the freedom to be involved in any one of these, or all of them. And whether there's one in particular that I guess I want to be free to show up at any meeting. I welcome any suggestions as to what role I should play. The one, just to be clear, I would very much, partly because I've been doing it, continue to be actively involved in relations with the county and other government. Mentions in all. Is anyone in the Klaus, would you perhaps like to get involved in
Definitely,
business development?
absolutely, and tourism, please.
Yeah, that's why I invited them. Yeah. Yeah, I actually have a little trouble distinguishing business development and tourism, but there's certain overlap, but
So business development could be that you get businesses to come in and establish a business here, and tourist development would be that people come here to stay overnight and become customers of the different.
Yeah, businesses for residents and tourism.
anyone else in the audience like to, it's not a requirement,
I'd be invested in infrastructure.
a G would,
Infrastructure?
okay? Good. All right, let's not push it any further. Anybody who's here who might be doing something they haven't said, let me know. And I think the next step is to reach out to other people who aren't here. And then we'll figure out how to move ahead.
Would you like to have a recommendation of kind of how to go forward?
Sure.
or-
Yes, that'd be lovely.
I'll write something up.
All right. If there's no more on that subject, new business. A discussion as to whether to authorize advertising for a public hearing to consider granting modification to the existing Foster Harris House special use permit to allow up to 2 seatings of 10 persons each, where 1 seating of 10 is now authorized. And a change to serving hours from 6:30 to 11 to 6 to 11. And a change to the name of the applicant owner to Peters Hospitality Management LLC. That last being nothing more than a technical change, I assume. No relevance to, it's not substantive change. Klaus, do you want to talk about what it is and why you were hoping to do what you want to do?
I would love to thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. You know, many times throughout our lives we make decisions, some of them are excellent and some of them are not as good. My decision after being retired for 8 years to go back to work and take my life savings at a risk to move from Los Angeles to this beautiful little town, in my opinion, was one of the best decisions I ever made. But at a great risk, actually, because when I made the decision to buy it, I didn't yet tell my wife. We lived for 40 years in Beverly Hills. And today I'm lucky to be alive, but because when I told her at first, she was so incredibly upset. Because unless you have been here, you don't know what a terrific town this is. How interesting the people are. For her, it was just, I'm not going to move into the boonies. And it was a pleasure, but anyway, she's come here, she loves it, the way I love it. Now we have a beautiful place, and I have to give a lot of credit to the previous owners, and especially John and Diane McPherson, who have done an absolutely exemplary job in creating image of total quality dining. So I have been here now for 1 year, and intentionally I've made no changes, because I just wanted to continue the trend of providing quality dinners and quality service. One vital mistake I've made in life If I had known that I would do this in September of my years, I should have become a chef. Instead, I chose to the leisure life of being a general manager of hotels for many, many years. So I have this beautiful inn with exceptional dining, and I don't know how to cook. So naturally, I have to ask, when you look of being able to only serve 10 dinners, hiring a chef is going to be very, very difficult, especially financially. But in addition, what I think is more important is that presently we are truly a special event venue. Local people come to our little restaurant on the anniversary and on their birthday. And I feel that we could do much, much better to truly become part of this community and to become another place for local people to enjoy to come there several times a year. And therefore, I'm asking to be able to serve up to 20 people, which gives me then the ability to reduce the scope, not the quality, but to reduce the scope so that now people would enjoy to coming to our restaurant more often. It's not just the price. Our dinners are excellent, but I don't like to have a common dinner every week either. I want to have a great meal. So we want to provide a great meal at a reasonable price. In addition, of course, we have just a very comfortable and very personalized atmosphere. And I truly believe that it could be a win-win situation. It gives me the ability to hire some qualified people, number one, but it also for the community, they would have another place that they ultimately could patronize and enjoy. And that's my story.
Questions? Observations? John, correct me, what we're doing here, we can have a discussion on this, can we not? Prior to having a sort of public, we will have, presumably we'll have a public hearing. But there's nothing wrong with having a conversation now, is there?
And really, the only action item before council tonight is to authorize the advertising, which I've certified in accordance with the town's policy that the application is complete and it's ready for advertising.
So with this change, are we going from a B&B to a restaurant? I heard the word restaurant used a couple times. And if that's the case, how does that change zoning, all the requirements of a restaurant versus a B&B that served a meal? Because that was the original intent. If I recall right, when this went in, it was John wanted to be able to serve dinners and was under the limitation of only as many seats as he would have guests. And if the number of people dining that were staying in Harris House didn't meet that head count, that he could then have people from the community come and have dinner. Now this sounds like it's changing to, it may only be 10 people per serving, but now you're creating a specialty restaurant. So is that really changing dramatically this facility, this SUP, and everything associated with it? Because that's what I'm hearing now, is this is a restaurant, not a B&B.
Well,
And they still have the function, but it's changing, it's now really two servings, not one.
Would you just be doing this for the dinners, or what about lunches?
Well, I would love to do lunch, particularly Sunday brunches.
I mean, it's,
One serve at a time, I think, come to this point. I believe it's going to be truly a benefit for the community, because I'm talking about being at least being open at least 5 nights a week, and you don't get tourism coming in here 5 nights a week. So this would be really an opportunity for our local residents to have another choice of a nice place to go. On a Tuesday night, there's no restaurant here. I would be open on Tuesday night.
So there, yeah, brings up that question. Under the original fee, you could only allow non-paying guests up to this 10 minutes. So now it's, if there's nobody
Say
there.
that last part, you can only allow up to non-10.
If you have the, Harris House has 10 beds essentially.
5 minutes.
5 beds.
5 rooms.
5, okay. And we allowed it, under the original, we said, okay, you can serve 10 dinners.
Right.
And assuming that you have 2 people per room, presumably. But if you only had, say, 4 rooms occupied, that would be 8 people, so you have two extra seats, you'd have 2 people from the community come in.
Well, let me clarify. That assumes that all 4 people staying there were having dinner.
Right. I'm just playing numbers.
So
So,
you could have 0 to 10 outside guests, even if you.
right, so now it's saying if there's no guests in, you can have 2 seatings of 10 dinners,
Yeah.
conceivably. So again, is that changing it to being a restaurant? If so, how does that change the SUP, the designations and everything else that were originally given to that facility, that address? How about that?
Well, from a land use perspective, I think you call this a minimal transitional use. That council's already made the decision that dinners can be served to non-guests. So that's a given. And the way council worded the statute, or the ordinance rather, it's limited to 10 guests per seating, but the number of seatings were not limited by the ordinance. So this application is in keeping with the ordinance. There's no new law that we're considering here. It's before council. This is just authorization to operate within the parameters of what council's already approved. Now, to me, just analyzing on a land use basis, you have a seating of guests of up to 10, which presumably would be 5 tables or 2 tables or 3 tables, which there's no signage, separate signage for a restaurant. That would not be permitted. The only signage is B&B, although it could be advertised, apart from the signage, through the internet and things like that. So, is something that small, surrounding the use of a B&B really a restaurant? I don't think so. It is transitional use, but it's a very minimal one. And you have 1 seating, and people leave, and then you have people come in for a 2nd seating. The hours remain virtually identical. They started half an hour earlier, but it's within the original time period that was contemplated by council. So, to me, the land use impacts and the potential inconveniences to neighbors and things like that, but given the location, everything's sort of site-specific in a way. I think those impacts would be minimal. There's adequate parking. What really more would be the impacts? To the extent there are, they're minimal, I think. It's not a restaurant. There's no separate signage, and I just don't think it's got the number of seats, but Patrick can better.
Yeah, I kind of agree. You may have 20 people, tables one night, but 4 nights for the rest next week might only have 3, you know, so I don't know if it's,
You never
With
have
the
20,
impact.
you never have 20 at once, it's still the 10.
10 and 10, but 20, you might have 20 diners one night and 5 one night. And I don't see that there's a big impact on it. It's, when you originally applied for this and you were going to have a chef, I was kind of wondering how you were going to be able to pay a chef to be there serving 10 dinners a night, maybe for less. I don't want to put you know, there's a certain hardship, I think, that we're looking at for someone running a business like that who needs to hire a chef. I'm not saying pro or con to that, but it's just an obvious, I think, observation. And it does bring in more meals and lodging taxes.
Spoken by a tree treasurer.
Yes.
Any questions or comments? Observations?
John Bennett.
Just saying.
Ray wants to, but I'm not clear on what you said about, I understand what Brad said, but it was becoming a restaurant. And you're saying it's not a restaurant?
Well, you
I
know,
just want to clarify that.
what is a restaurant? Here, it's some use that, how do you define a restaurant? To me, you know, from a land use perspective, it's not the type of thing where there's signage for a restaurant and somebody driving down the street would pull in, that type of thing. It's a use that's still surrounding the B&B use. The only signage is for the B&B. And it's very, it's very limited. We have at most, 5 tables in the place. I haven't been to many restaurants with only 5 tables. So it seems to me like a very minimal use, minimal impacts. It doesn't have the type of impacts that you normally have with a restaurant with a lot of lighting, signage, different things. Anybody coming in and going, this would be by reservation. And that's the type of operation that would presumably attract the type of clientele that really wouldn't be a factor to be considered otherwise.
In the original SUP, I don't recall, did we limit the number of nights one could be open or not? As a practical matter, McPherson and then Klaus are typically only open 3 nights a week. He is saying I tend to be open more often than that.
I thought it was just the hours, so 7 days a week, just the hours. The hours were limited, it was 6:30 to 11, but I don't think it was limited number of days.
Because that is, to me, we didn't limit them, I guess, but to me, if you talk about what is the change, having people come there more often is a change. Is that a bad change or a good change? It's a change. All over the you have potentially a greater volume of people. Well, potentially 20,000 once. The point of doing it. There's the impact on neighbors. There is is it good or bad for the community? Those are, to me, a set of questions. Then there is these sort of legal definitions which are relevant. And what is a restaurant? What isn't a restaurant? To me, it's certainly served as a place that serves food to guests. A restaurant or not, been called for. Anyway, those are sort of meanderings. Ray, you had your hand up a while ago. And then Shrum.
Yeah, I'm a member of an endangered species here in town, and that's a resident. This ordinance that Mr. Bennett drafted is one of the most dangerous ordinances we have on our books. My understanding was that the McPhersons wanted to serve dinners to not more than 10 people based on the fact that you have 5 rooms, 2 people per room, but it allowed for outside guests, so there would be 10 guests. And I expected it would be Saturday night. I didn't come to any of the hearings. The ordinance as drafted allows for a B&B to serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner to outside guests. And now we've got a situation where we're not just going to do that 5 nights a week. Now we're going to do it twice a night on at least 1 night a week. And if that's not making it a B&B, a restaurant, I don't know what a restaurant is. Yes, it would be wonderful to have a little competition for the cafe, but not next door to me. I'm surrounded by B&Bs. Klaus is in my front yard. Mary Ann's in a side yard. Gay Street Inn's in another side yard. B&Bs are under strong competition from Airbnbs. If they want to make some additional money, start a restaurant. All you have to do is walk down Jet Street when Tula's Kitchen is in business and understand what an exhaust fan from a restaurant can do to the ambiance of the immediate area. I would propose that the Planning Commission readdress this ordinance. And I would tell Klaus, he wasn't here when the ordinance was passed. He doesn't know the legislative history. But it was all done as related to a B&B. In the old days, when B&Bs first came to Little Washington, there was a lot of discussion about disrupting a residential neighborhood with a B&B. And we all talked about it, and we came to a reasonable resolution. Now we've got B&Bs who are going to become restaurants. Now you can't have a restaurant in the zone that any of the B&Bs are in. A restaurant is a completely different zoning category. And I understand economically, Klaus has a major investment, and he would like to make a little profit on that investment. But this isn't the way to do it. Now, he's under the ordinance. You can't jerk that ordinance away from Klaus. But at least you can keep it to 10 dinners a night. And if he wants to have more nights of the week, I don't see any way that you can say no. But I don't think you ought to have 2 seatings, 20 people. You know, it's easy for John to say, oh, that's minimal impact. He doesn't live here. And I find it very disturbing, you know, that we're talking about something so casually. Oh yeah, it's just 10 more people. And they'll be nice people. It's still an intrusion on a residential neighborhood. And I am absolutely opposed to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean, I think you...
Well, the only thing that I was saying, the reason that he even was asking for more was so that he could make it worthwhile for the chef to be able to make enough money to even, you know, make it worth his time to even come. But I don't know necessarily that everybody that would be at this place would be, they might go to the inn or wherever, to Tula's or different places. So it would still be the same openness there. I don't know. But I was just thinking that in order to get a chef to come, you would have to be able to provide him with something to do. So that's why I would think he would be asking for more seatings. That's the only thing I want to say.
Other comments? Jean?
I can see a lot of sides to this, but I think, aren't you just considering authorizing advertising? And then next time going to hear from the public about whether or not it's a good idea? I mean, maybe I don't understand it correctly, but John, isn't, I mean, what needs to be done just to authorize advertising?
I mean, I would suggest,
This is not the end-all be-all, everybody's gonna have a real say this time around.
yeah, an advertised public hearing and everybody should show up, including
Yeah.
people who've already spoken tonight. And it's just sort of getting, a sense of what some of the questions are, the issues are, what people think. Any other? Okay. Any other thoughts here, Ms. Taylor? Okay.
I have to go back and study the
Okay. Well, the issue is whether or not we vote to have a public hearing. And, am I correct?
Yeah, the application's in order, it's
Yes.
complete and
So I
ready to
propose,
be debated.
I propose we have a public hearing next month on this subject.
We need to make a motion to that?
That was my effort.
Oh, I'll make the motion to make a public meeting.
Or you made the motion,
I did.
so-
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry, I intended, that was my intention.
I will second the motion.
Voice vote, John, or
Roll call.
roll call, okay?
Okay. Aye.
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 All right.
So that'll be on next month's.
So that will be advertised in the appropriate number of issues in the Rappahannock News prior to the meeting. All right, let me open up,
Thank you very much.
get this sit down.
Thank you.
I open up the public forum to anybody, any subject, any question. Going once. Somebody going twice. Gone. Close the public forum. Mark?
Good luck to hear that last one, you sped it up, so everybody.
Yeah, we sort of, no closed session. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I take it.
I say.
All in favor? Aye. Council.